Hello everyone, and in this video we'll be able to talk about all the brand new units coming into NORSCA for Tides of Torment. You might be wondering where the Dreadmore was, but he's actually underground. Don't worry, it's an actual feature. But yeah, there's a bunch of brand new units which will be available to different factions and so on. We'll be going over all that on where each unit lands when the campaign embargo goes up. But until then, I want to talk about all the new units, how they work, what functionality they do have, and comparing them to some other units that we are already used to. Before anything, NORSCA does have a lot of variants, but I feel like that actually does help out quite a bit because it fills up a lot of gaps that the NORSCA roster did have. I'll be able to give you some experience that I've been able to get from these units in campaign also. I just won't be able to show off any campaign until the embargo date. You know, it's the regular thing, right? So let's just jump right in. So we're going to talk about the legendary Lord SAYL the Faithless. So he's a spellcaster lord with a mix of the Lore of Heavens and the Lore of Shadows, which makes him quite interesting in terms of utility. Alongside that, you can see that he is able to mount on a variety of different mount options, including a War Mammoth, which makes a lot of sense. That is something that he's very well known for in the lore. Stat-wise, he's pretty decent. He's kind of squishy, but I imagine that when you start taking him up into combat, he's going to be mounted on either a chariot or a mammoth, so it won't be too much of a problem. Really, my only issue with this character is that his fabled Chaos Spawn, Nightmare, is unfortunately a wind spell, so he's not even a summon. But his campaign is very unique compared to the other NORSCAs. You'll get more detail on that very soon. There's not really too much to talk about when it comes to this character, which I think is ultimately a good thing. You know what you're getting with this character if you know his lore. So we're going to jump directly onto your generic Lord option. This is the Spellcaster Lord, so we finally have Sorcerer Shamans. We're going to be quick here too because it's the same mount options. You can have them on Mammoths, you can have them on Chariots and Horses, and you've got access to the Lore of Fire, the Lore of Death, and the Lore of Metal. I know Spellcaster Lords are very popular when it comes to Total War, so yeah, you're going to be able to have spells from the very beginning without having to worry about getting that building for the spellcasters up and running when you want to focus more on some other troops first. The NORSCA roster is looking a little bit more full now. The new generic hero is the FIMIR Noble, and this one is going to be your great weapon wielding supportive character. Very, very good at dealing damage. Obviously armor piercing, he's damage dealer, he's got scaly skin and he's very well armored. So he can take a punch, but he can pack a punch back too. You can see from the stats there, quite high weapon strength, very decent charge bonus, surprisingly good speed, which I really wasn't expecting, and some pretty cool active effects like obviously Favorite of the Matriarch. It does a lot of buffs towards melee damage and so on. You've also got Encourage there, and Shrouded Miss, which is going to be very good for buffing up your troops when you're dealing with some range attacks over there. Yeah, no complaints. Surprised that we ended up getting one, but it's a good surprise nonetheless. The character isn't too bad when it comes to fighting against generic troopers. I've got them here fighting against some Marauder champions, which are much stronger than generic troopers, and he can perform quite well. The splash attack is noticeable. The problem here is just the AI kind of focused on the shaman for some reason. I guess it was just proximity fighting and that's it. But I will say that I've seen the character do quite well overall, and where it does excel is fighting against other characters. Where I'm going to show off opposite sides of the spectrum. Marauder chieftains, yeah, sure, aren't the best lords when it comes to defensive, but it's also not like the worst. And they have taken a lot of damage when the FIMIR Noble just comes in and really slashes them apart. Well, slams because he's using a mace, but it is very impressive to see, and I think that that type of stuff shows that the character does have some fairly good substance. The other side of the spectrum would be Chaos Lords of Nurgle being some of the most durable Lord characters available from the generics. Yeah, still pretty good damage. Sure, the Lord is doing quite a lot of damage back to the FIMIR, but I think it just makes sense from that point of view that it's going to kind of even out. A hero doing as much damage as a Lord is quite good overall. BEORG BEARSTRUCK is a classic from back in the day, and really, he is pretty decent. So, he's got anti-large, melee expert frenzy, he's got regeneration too, which is going to make him pretty damn good on the battlefield. Not only that, but it does hit quite hard. He's got some pretty good bonuses like Warcry, for example, so it can buff up a lot of stuff. And you've got Thrill of the Battle, which as long as you're in melee, you'll be able to get more melee defense. He's got Guardian also. Again, very, very good character. I don't see that there's going to be a lot of problem fielding him in your armies. The regen is incredibly useful too. And surprisingly, very, very high physical resistance. I wasn't really expecting such a big push over there. This character does very well with anti-large stuff. Now, don't expect him to do amazing against Kolek. In fact, fairly early on. Like, if he gets the first few hits, that's perfectly fine. But yeah, he's not going to beat someone like Kolek. With a few campaign skills, he will do a lot better though, so don't worry about that. Where he does do very well is generic monsters and even stuff like Frog. Frog can still really kick him down. Again, legendary lords are generally better than legendary heroes, but the damage output is expected from what a legendary hero is. He does very, very well at taking out monsters, and again, during your campaigns, you can buff him up really, really well, so don't think that he's just going to be a wet noodle. I think he's done very well on screen so far. I've been using him with my own playthroughs, and yeah, I've got him up front and personal doing quite a lot. He's not as useful as, say, SAYL in some regard, but that maybe could just be some favoritism towards SAYL. So we're going to jump into the brand new units now. We do have the Marauder BEARMEN. So these are going to be quite interesting because you've got access to two different types. They're going to be your halfway point between your normal Marauders and your champions, but you've got them with sword and board, and you've also got them great weapons. Ultimately, very, very useful tools. These units will also benefit from an ability called Rage. As long as you're in combat, you'll keep getting more augments towards your melee attack, physical resistance, and your leadership. And these are troopers that you're going to want in there, even when you can start getting up the normal champions. I feel like you're going to be using a lot of BEARMEN too. The best way to test out these units would be using them against marked Marauders, so the God-touched ones, where we've got Hell Scourgers fighting against the normal sword and board ones, and we also have the great weapons from Nurgle fighting against the great weapons, just to kind of see how each of them do. The tester map that you normally use with the mod is unfortunately not working with this DLC, so I am just using a normal map. The NPC's Lord is there, so it can skew it a little bit, but as you can see, damage-wise, they're really able to hold out their own. I know some people might be saying, well, those are just marked Marauders, but remember that marked Marauders do have a lot of benefits over the standard ones because they have access to a lot of buffs from their respective marks of chaos. And when their rage mechanic starts boosting up more and more, they just get really deadly. So I can imagine a lot of people using these troopers as much as possible. So I've had to jump in with an edit here because I want to talk about this properly. So the majority of your humans will have a brand new battle mechanic known as Rage. Basically, as long as they stay in combat, they'll be getting more and more buffs, increases to physical resistance, leadership, and melee attack. Physical resistance by up to 10%, leadership +8, and melee attack +8. This is only available to your humans, but this includes your heroes and your lords, but not your monsters, and obviously not your berserkers. They have the berserk mechanic instead, but this is going to make you much, much more killier on the battlefield. It's something that I didn't really notice at first, I'm not going to lie, but I've been able to do a decent amount of battles now with NORSCA, and I have been able to see a very drastic change in NORSCA's battle ability. That's something that you're going to be seeing a lot more. This was not just in campaign, this was in battles also, just like generic custom battles or even multiplayer. It's actually quite nice to see as it brings in the aspect of like, yeah, they're angry Viking men, right? Okay, and here's the big one that even I wasn't expecting. KURGAN horsemen are a thing now. So we got two different versions, one with dual weapons and one with a great axe. Unfortunately, no bowmen, which is a bit weird from steppe horsemen, but they do look a little bit different compared to the normal marauders. They are a bit darker skinned, which is expected from, you know, Kurgans. They're supposed to be copper skinned. My surprise is there because while they're supposed to be a bit of a reskin, they are a different culture, and it's good that they're represented as much there. So Kurgans can Vanguard, which makes them very, very powerful, and they've got access to the same rage mechanic as the BEARMEN do, so they are going to be very, very tasty as a shock cavalry. Lack of range options aside, I am pleasantly surprised of how they've performed in the battlefield. Generally quite good overall. Like, you can have them charge straight into the enemy lines. Their frenzy will help with that, or you can go with the usual, you know, get them from the flank or the rear, which is, well, the typical type of fighting there. I'm testing them out here versus some marauders, because once again, marauders are very, very good to get these testings off, and also some chaos warriors too. Yeah, like, surprisingly good. I know, I'm surprised, because cavalry, when it comes to creative assembly, has always been very hit and miss. Sure, the Chaos Warriors do overpower, and there is like a lot of damage here, but keep in mind that the Chaos Warriors are very, very strong, and I've got the Tzeentch Spearmen there just to see how well they can do. While they've not completely decimated the units, straight in front of line, doing about half of the damage to the Chaos Warriors is actually quite impressive. Okay, now we can talk about the Chimera. So this is a unit we've known has existed for a long, long time because it was in the Warhammer 3 art book at launch, yet we hadn't seen it until now. This is really, really good. First up, the Animations are cool. I like it. It's one of my favorite monsters when it comes to chaos. It's very fast. It's very durable. You might be saying, well, you know, we've got a cockatrice and we've got a manticore. What's so good about this? But yeah, it's the same. I mean, it just hits a little harder. That's the benefit of chaos. It's the natural progression of things, and I think that the Chimera does it very well. Its breath attack is fantastic, and after doing a few battles with Moloch, which there'll be some multiplayer battles popping up soon, yeah, it does pretty well. I'm genuinely surprised with how well this monster performs, taking out single entities or just throwing it into like a horde of enemies and just really hitting them as hard as possible. I have seen a lot more interest in this creature, and the good thing is that you get to see it with a few different factions, so it's not just with NORSCA if you're not interested in playing NORSCA. I originally thought that this was going to be one of the worst units in the DLC for NORSCA, but it turned out to be one of the better ones. Well, NORSCA as a whole has been doing very well in terms of units. I don't think I mentioned how well the breath attack does well, so I've come in with an edit here. I'm doing my final checks before the embargo drop. And yeah, no, I mean, you can see it. It does a lot of damage to big units, such as the Marauder BEARMEN over there. The only time that it doesn't do too well is when, obviously, it misses. And yeah, breath weapons can miss. So it hit a little bit of frog, but didn't do a lot. The thing is, it's fire attack, poison attack, magic attack, all in one. Like, it's very, very strong. And once it gets into melee, it does very well too. It's a unit that you shouldn't really go, oh yeah, it's just another buffed up manticore. Believe me, it's a really fun unit. And if you like big killy monsters, it's awesome. My only real problem is that the tail doesn't act by itself. But I guess it would have been too hard to animate. Maybe it's just because of how the skeleton's done. It would have been way too complicated, which is fair. I mean, at the end of the day, it still does what it does. Alright, now we're jumping into the Cursed ETTIN, which there's two of them. They'll work in a very similar way, other than the fact that one's a spellcaster and one isn't, right? They've got dual personality, which means that you'll get different effects on your different health parts, which is kind of cool, right? So like the more health you have, you've got one personality. When it gets to a certain threshold, you've got the other one. Their armor piercing, it's basically like a stronger version of the Giant. I like them. I actually think that the ETTIN is one of the coolest models that we've ever had for Warhammer Fantasy, so seeing this finally implemented in Total War is definitely going to add a lot of really cool flavor here. The melee one overall is quite good, with really good standing power. The only thing is it is very slow, right? So keep that in mind. Don't expect that to catch up with all your other stuff because, yeah, you're going to be pushing off quite heavily. But you do have access to the Spellcaster one, which I kind of like a little bit more, mostly because you do have some bound spells there with some variety of different lore, which is really funny, in all honesty. I was expecting more of like the buffer debuffer. Instead, we get like Flock of Doom, Doom and Darkness, and Enfeebly Foe, all very good spells with no Winds of Magic cost. Again, very, very strong, can still be perfectly fine in melee. I think these units were just a long time coming, which is kind of weird because, you know, NORSCA hasn't really had note support until now. But hey, better late than never. We've got them. They're going to be replacing the Giants in most cases. I don't think you're going to be using Giants a lot now that you've got access to these lads, which is maybe for the best. You know, way too many factions use Giants as it stands, or well, have access to Giants and nobody really uses them because it's what, like 5 races that have access to Giants now? Maybe more. It's still important to note that, yeah, they still can be stun locked and stuff like that. So, like, you can see on screen now, or at least you should be able to, the Giants fighting against the ETTINs. Yeah, it's kind of back and forth. It very much depends on what you take. Overall, I think the damage output is quite good. I've been playing some campaign and I've been actually fielding them, right? So I feel incentivized to bring in ETTINs. And lastly, we have the Dreadmore, which is perhaps the weirdest entry, mostly because it starts off underground, right? You might be thinking, well, what does that have to do with anything? Well, after doing some battles with some other players, yeah, it's completely invisible. Like, they can see that it's under there, but they can't target it. Which is going to lead to some interesting fights. I've yet to see the AI field them in any way, shape, or form, and I'm kind of curious to see how that's going to happen, so hopefully, whilst we get to the point of campaign, I'll be able to show that off, because I'd like to see it being used from a campaign point of view rather than just a battle AI. So yeah, you can bring it up. It's a ranged unit. It can't move when it's up, but you can teleport it, or you can make it go underground again. It's got a lot of movement about it, which, again, very, very interesting. It's a weird interpretation, but I guess it does fit quite well. It's definitely very unique. And I just want to point out here that now that we do have something that can go underground and teleport, essentially, you know, Creative Assembly, if you're listening, it would be very, very nice if you please reworked Skitterleap to actually be a teleporter, because now we have teleport spells. It's actually really cool. It's really cool that we have this now. Now, I've noticed that the AI can take a moment to kind of register that the Dreadmore has now come out of the ground and so on, which I guess is going to need some tweaking. Like, I've had a Dreadmore pop up and the Chaos Lord just kind of walked past it and then realized, oh shit, and turned around to attack it. It's going to be kind of something new, right? It's a new unit type in a sense, and a new unit ability, and that stuff has to get refined. I know some people might be mad at that already, but really, I think with enough polish, yeah, it's going to lead to some very interesting things in the future, right? Like a lot of borrowing stuff. You never know for like future Total War games. This is probably them just kind of future-proofing stuff, like getting the testing done now. You never know, right? But so far, yeah, it's interesting. I will have to say in terms of utility, though, I don't think it's too strong. I don't know. Like, so I've had it shooting and it doesn't do amazing damage. I've had it spawn up and melee-wise, it doesn't do a lot. I've done a number of battles now, a number of battles versus other players, versus AI and everything. Maybe it's just a unit that's not for me. Whereas the Kurgans, for example, I do very well with them. But I just feel like maybe it needs a little bit more tweaking. Now, campaign, you've obviously got more effects that can just boost them up and make them a bit more killier. Maybe I just need some more time with the Dreadmore. So I'm not like writing it out for good. I think every other unit for NORSCA has been quite beneficial. Which, by the way, yeah, basically all the Norskins themselves have rage, which is great. But like the Berserkers, interestingly enough, I'm not sure why. But everything so far has been, yeah, pretty decent. I would say that the NORSCA roster overall is looking pretty damn tasty. You do have a lot of trolls that you can use with Frog now, for example. There are a few holes, like I would have preferred if we would have had a melee human hero also, but I guess they really, really wanted to get another FIMIR in, which is interesting. Like, we have quite a lot of FIMIRs now. You never know about the future, but I don't want to talk about future stuff now. I obviously can't rate this stuff until the review embargo, which is kind of annoying because like I would like to rate it under unit usefulness, but that goes against that too. So yeah, so far what I can say is I'm having fun with the new NORSCA units. It definitely fills out a few glaring holes that the roster have, the Kurgans being wonderful in terms of cavalry damage. I've got a really fun battle actually with the Kurgans, so it won't be too long until you get to see that one. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Let's start a bit of a discussion. There's a lot of videos coming out for the next few days. Hopefully it won't be too long until the campaign stuff. I should be in the middle of a move by the time that these videos come out, so please keep that in mind. And I'll see you all again very, very soon, guys. Have a nice day.